with some clarifying answers. Hi Don, how are you? To the questions about the space needs vis-a-vis curriculum. So, why don't you jump into your document, Mr.
Well, hold on, I thought we were going to do some organizational stuff first. About
Like
minutes and things like that?
I was going to do this to the end, but
Okay. People want to do it now or at the end of the meeting? If you do it at the end of the meeting, then no one can take minutes for tonight.
oh, in terms of taking minutes, I'm happy to volunteer to take minutes. But if
Okay,
anybody else wants to, that's it. I'm
okay,
I'm taking notes too, so it doesn't matter.
all right.
We'll double team.
yeah.
So we're jumping into.
Jump right in.
Have you had a chance to read through it yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let me pull up.
Sure.
So this was and I want to qualify this very preliminary draft first attempt at trying to answer some of the questions that were posed previously, and I picked, I think, the three that seem to be the most, have been discussed the most. What is it in the current curriculum that we don't have the space for? What is it in the hoped-for curriculum that we don't have the space for? In a current population where the administrative or student support tasks are constrained due to lack of space. So I want to keep qualifying by saying that this was primarily me trying to, using information from the big document that we've been working on and getting a little bit of feedback, but this was primarily me trying to come up with just a starting point. So I think that there's tremendous depth to these questions. There's a lot more that needs to be done. I posed one possible next step at the end in going and really working closely one-on-one with the department heads to get their feedback, because this doesn't really reflect a lot of, I've gotten some feedback over the process of the last year and gone to them, but I haven't sat down with them and posed these specific questions. So I started with looking at the current curriculum. What do we currently do, and how does space constrain what we currently do? And in my 2.5 years so far as principal, I have tried to be very careful to not start with, well, we don't have the space for that, so we're not going to do it. I've tried to start with what is it we're trying to do, and let's try to figure out some way to jury-rig the space to make it happen. So for the most part, the answer to the first question is not, we haven't gotten to a point yet where I've been able to say, oh, we simply can't do that. We've tried to figure out how to do things, but the space significantly impacts, in some ways more, in some ways less, the quality of what we're able to do and the extent to which we're capable to do different things. Do you want me to go through each of these? What would be most helpful for you right now in talking through this? Do you have specific questions that you want me to speak to?
Might be helpful to not assume that everybody has read it, and I think in that sense, your commentary might be fruitful.
Okay.
So
I'll try not to just read it, I'll try to just kind of paraphrase. So I started with talking about how space impacts the current situation, started with our science classrooms. We've talked a lot about science classrooms. Science classrooms are relatively small. I think most of you, or at least many of you, have been in the science classrooms and seen the way that they're physically arranged. With kind of the lab space, the way it's arranged, leaves a relatively small space in the middle that doesn't allow for a whole lot of flexible instructional activity. It's really kind of most efficient from a space perspective to just have kids in rows. There's a lot of opportunity to do a whole lot of collaboration in there. We also have pretty significant problems with venting and the way safety equipment is configured. In terms of art classes, if you've been in those rooms, you've seen we have 3 art spaces. One is essentially an interior classroom that was turned into an art room. So right away, the fact that it's an interior classroom with no natural light is problematic from an art standpoint. And then the other 2 spaces are really one relatively decent sized space that was carved in half. That does have some nice natural light, which is great, but it's very tight. I was actually in there today for a printmaking silkscreen class. And it limits the number of students who can be in there, and kids are kind of on top of each other. There's very minimal space for storage. So kids, while they're working, are trying to go and access different art supplies. Little things like the kiln room is not directly connected, so kids have to go out in the hall and go into another room. Theater arts classes, we started a brand new theater arts program this year in the building. We currently offer 3 periods of theater arts classes, which I would like to expand to 4 or 5 periods next year if we can. Those classes are auditorium, which kind of makes sense, but the auditorium is also used by a bunch of other different groups in the building. During the school day, our RAD classes, the Rape, Aggression, Defense, uses theater arts. We also have all kinds of after-school programs that are happening in the auditorium. For example, we just had the cast list announced today for the spring musical, which will take place in March. They start building the set for that, and so now you're starting to create some different conflicts with space, where you're trying to hold an art class in a space that's being used for a lot of other things. We've added a fair number of computer science classes and journalism classes in the last couple of years, and would like to continue to increase that. And we only have a finite number of general use computer labs, and a lot of those computer science and journalism classes need very specialized software, so it's something that needs to be on desktop computers. It's not something that you can have on a Chromebook. We have lots of Chromebooks, but Chromebooks oftentimes don't work with the specialized software.
Yep. What's journalism?
So there are a number of different journalism classes. So they learn about the journalism process, but they also do like our video news. So we do bi-weekly video news broadcasts throughout the building. That's something when we get to later that we would like to expand. But they're learning about what journalism is. They also do the Chieftain Press, which is the print newspaper in the building.
A lot of it's digital media.
Yep. Wellness classes, particularly for our juniors and seniors, we've tried to introduce more kind of personalized wellness classes. RAD is a nice example, but then we also have CrossFit, which we're at our 2nd year of offering. We have a teacher who's a certified CrossFit trainer, strength and conditioning, total body workout. Total body workout will get into things like yoga as well. And so when you've got multiple wellness classes happening at the same time, particularly when they need kind of more specialized or private space, something like doing yoga doesn't really fit well with in a gym while there are 2 or 3 other classes happening at the same time. So that's problematic. We have one period right now where wellness classes are having to kind of spill off and find space in halls because they don't really have the existing space to be able to do it. The weight room also, things like a CrossFit class or a strength and conditioning class in the weight room, our weight room is pretty problematic.
Do those qualify as physical education courses in the larger context of either the school's credit system or the state's perspective?
Yes, so the state requires that students take physical education classes every year. And wellness, we talk about wellness more broadly. Yes, so a RAD class qualifies as their physical education class, total body workout qualifies as their physical education class, and so on.
So it's an opportunity to have a sort of non-standard phys ed experience compared to perhaps what all of us experienced in our youth.
Our wellness class tries very hard to not have it be what many of us remember gym class being. They're trying to have it be, and I try to very specifically use the term wellness and not physical education, because wellness is much larger than just physical education.
Yep.
I think I might mention in there, I can't remember, our health classes. So our sophomores take a semester of health. Those are taught in the classroom. Right now, our health teacher moves across, I think it's 3 different classrooms. At one point, it was going to be 4, but I was able to get it to 3 different classrooms. So he'll be in this classroom for 2 periods, then he moves and he goes to another classroom for 2 periods. So and those are not classrooms that are really, they're just kind of general use classrooms. So he's in a math classroom 1 period, literally in a math classroom 1 period, and an English classroom the next period. And then I mentioned the special ed and regular education support programs, bless you. When we did the tour way back at the start of our meetings, talked about the academic support center, which has shifted kind of from space to space because I kept needing to take that space for other things. So we have a pretty small academic support center, which is in the back of the media center. The size of that space is a limiting factor on the number of kids who can be participating in that. Our special education,
Actually, what is the limit presently for the support center? How many people at once?
I don't think we can get more than about 12 kids in there at a time without it starting to become distracting. Because kids are generally in there because they need a quiet, structured environment, or kids are in there, we're trying to facilitate peer tutoring.
So you actually need multiple small spaces for that kind of activity. So that
Either multiple small spaces or a larger space that allows kind of, sections, and you can even come in and you can put in like the 6-foot tall partitions can create some different space, because the academic support center currently isn't a large enough space to be able to do that. It's a very nice, comfortable space, and Lisa Hamlin, who works in the academic support center, has done a great job in trying to make use of the space as well as possible. But it has its limitations. I talk about our learning center classes, which take place in 2 different rooms. One of those is relatively nice size. That's room 216. I think I talked about that on the tour. That's a relatively big room, and that serves our freshmen and sophomores who have IEPs, and we have a higher number of freshmen and sophomores with IEPs, so it makes sense that the larger space would be for them, but we still have a fair number of kids in there at a given time. And again, those are students who generally need a more quiet, structured environment in order to be successful. Our other special ed learning center room is a pretty small room. It used to be the academic support center before I kicked the academic support center out of there to make space for special education. We walked back on the tour into our, what we call LC3, Learning Center 3. That's our therapeutic program, which is kind of a small suite of different rooms. Our in-school suspension room is actually in that same suite. Now we have a different exit and entrance so that we can have students who are assigned to in-school suspension not going through the Learning Center 3 suite to get in there, but somewhat problematic that you've got our in-school suspension space right next to our therapeutic space. Our site-based school psychologist, I mentioned where she is. Her office is in our media center. We had to kind of convert some space to make that work for her. And there were actually, the walls for her office had about a 2-inch gap or so.
Yeah, at least.
Her office is adjacent to a computer lab in the media center, and so there was about this 2-inch gap, so essentially anything that was being said in her office could be heard in the computer lab and vice versa, which is not particularly good when you're doing special education testing and having private conversations with kids and with parents. So we were able to, Bill Cleary and his team were able to go in and kind of use foam to fill that, so now there is a soundproof barrier, but not a fantastic.
Problem is that wall butts up against a plate glass window. They built the wall on a window.
Yeah.
So there's no way to attach the wall to the wall. So we had to use foam to try to, it's an odd situation.
We took an office that was in our media center and converted that into our space for English language learners, so that is actually teaching space. Now, we don't have a large number of kids in there at any given time. I think 3 or 4 is I think 3 is the highest number of students we have in there at any one time. So it's not a particularly significant number of kids, but it's office space, not instructional space. So those are an initial step towards identifying the ways in which the current space constrains current curriculum.
Do you, excuse me, do you have a feel for if the, your need for, if you're going to get a greater population of English language learners over, if the population is growing, is that going to, I know it seems like a small number now, but could it
It is a
grow
relatively small.
or not?
We've seen a slight uptick, but when you're talking about a small number, a 50% increase can be going from
3 to 4
or 4 to 6.
Yeah.
But do you know what the trend is district-wide?
Well, it's a little bit deceptive, because when students come new to our district, we need ELL services, they have a period of time of receiving intense services. Right now, it's upticking. Stowe is our largest town with the largest number of students, and then Bolton, and then Lancaster. It's totally flipped. Lancaster used to be the largest.
Largest in that particular population.
In that
is what you're
population
saying?
of ELL students. So by the time they get to the high school, generally they have exhausted what ELL services are necessary, and they're on a monitor basis. Occasionally, mostly from our group homes, we get students who have
That's what I thought,
ELL
yeah.
students. So it's usually 3 to 5 is generally the number.
Okay,
And that's what we've been
thank you.
servicing.
That's actually what I was asking.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And for that experience, if someone arrives at school needing attention, how long can they be involved in that particular aspect of helping them out, the ELL? Is that
So
a year, a couple years?
It depends on how new they are to the country.
Yeah.
So, if they're brand new at 9th grade, moving here from Ecuador
China,
or China, then pretty much all 4 years they could receive up to 2.5 hours of services directly in the 1-to-1 or 1 to 3 to 5 small groups.
So all it takes is 2 or 3 families, and that could really change that
Absolutely.
particular aspect of things.
Absolutely, it's very hard to staff too.
But those people would be in a group home?
No, it just so happens that right now, the majority of our newcomers to our high school happen to come from our group home, RFK.
And they don't have any services at RFK for any of that stuff?
They're not required to.
And where there's
And if they
Right.
qualify to be in the high school,
Right.
then
Well, no, that's fine, that just doesn't make any sense. I mean,
They're pretty limited. It's not, I mean, it's not their fault that they're pretty limited in the academic support services
So
that
they're
they
just
are able to
a
provide.
meal in a bed.
Say again?
They're just a meal in a bed.
They're much more than that, but they don't really stray into the academic support side of things.
It's other kinds of counseling and stuff like that.
Yeah, they have, I mean, the kids all have clinicians that are doing all kinds of counseling. There's all kinds of different programs that they do that might, I mean, they have things like they're trying to build a climbing wall, but they also, they do lots of different trips with the kids. They have like a motorbiking group so they do different kinds of activities with the students. But as far as academic support services, there's not a whole lot. They're really focused more on kind of the social emotional piece. Other questions before I move on to the next part? So in thinking about what we hope to be able to do, this year we added a couple specialized science courses. We added epidemiology, maritime science, forensics, and the molecular gastronomy. I would like to be able to continue to do that sort of thing. We're becoming very tight with our space. Last year I think you all know, because I brought it up multiple times, we had a science class that we had to be taught in an art room because of space availability. This year we've got a class that is, depending upon what day it is, they're in different classrooms. Our ability to run additional labs. So the majority of our science classes meet 1 period a day, but we also offer the opportunity for students to do an extra lab every 4 days, and some of our science classes do an extra lab every 2 days. That's pretty beneficial when you look at things like MCAS scores and grades. The students who take part in extra labs do better, so it's a wonderful opportunity to add. From a space standpoint, that's going to really constrain our ability to continue to do that sort of thing as enrollment increases.
So can I ask a question along those lines? Some of the biology classes have a lab and some of the biology classes don't, is that right?
So all of the biology classes have labs. Some of the biology classes have an extra period every 4 days to do additional lab. So,
Those are the 5 credits.
say again?
Right, that's the 5 credit course.
That's the 5 credit course, correct. So students are going to have more lab exposure in a 5 credit course. They're still going to do labs in a 4 credit course, but you have 25% more time in a 5 credit course to be able to do that type of stuff.
Do you have more students wanting the 5 credit course than you can accommodate?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. That is a consistent trend, is that we have more students requesting 5 credit labs than we are able to fill.
And how big is that number now, school-wide? Do you have a
I
sense
have
of
last
that?
year's numbers, if you want to compare.
You have them like right there with you?
So just for accelerated biology last year, we had 22 kids who could not get the 5th credit course.
How
And
many
the-
could?
I'm sorry.
How many did in accelerated?
21. It probably moved up to 24, yeah.
So there's been 1 class of accelerated 5 credit.
Yes.
That was biology, did you say?
Yeah.
Accelerated biology.
Part of that will be personnel driven as well, so I mean, I don't want to suggest that that's all facility driven. Part of that is personnel driven as well.
How about the others, honors and
AP is taught as both the high school curriculum and the college curriculum together, so that's a double period in the sciences.
Yeah.
So there's not an option, you take it as a double period for AP. Honors biology was new this year,
Okay.
and that has the extra lab
That's a 5 credit.
in the 5 credit, and that there wasn't an option to not. And for college prep, we had 6 kids who wanted the 5th credit. We didn't all of our college prep biologies were 4 credits this year.
Yeah.
That's where you really want to see them.
We want to see them everywhere.
Having 5 credit classes.
So how many of them were
CP
accommodated though? In CP?
We didn't have a 5 credit.
So not at all? And 6 asked for?
That was CP Bio. CP Chem, we had 17 request the 5 credit, and that was not, we did not run that. We could move them into a 4 credit.
Right. So it just, you know, depends. The enrollment's going to vary year to year. As guidance counselor, I talk to the kids about if you find that the labs help you with learning, you'll want to do the 5th credit. If you really love science and want to go into the sciences, you want to do the 5th credit. Sometimes they're juggling all the different things that they want to take and trying to make them work. That 5th credit usually rolls up against their gym class and fills in that period.
So can help me to understand, for biology, for example, are there 4 levels or categories of biology classes one might take? Am I hearing that correctly? There's what, AP?
This year, there's
college?
AP. Traditionally, we've had college prep, accelerated, and either honors or AP. Okay? This year, we have a pilot of trying an honors biology out,
In addition to the AP.
in addition to the AP.
So this year there are 4 flavors of the biology series,
Right.
is that right?
The honors and the AP are going to follow different curriculum. It's a similar rigor.
And basically the AP, you're bound to follow
You're-
what the test
The college
wants you
board.
to do, and then
Yes.
the honors, actually you're able to design your own darn curriculum, thank you very much, right?
Much of it, there'll be quite a bit of overlap, but yes,
Yeah.
if the teachers want to feel like emphasizing this a little bit more.
Right.
But I mean, we're still running by the state frameworks for that, so.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And similarly, chemistry has how many flavors of courses?
College prep, accelerated, and AP.
So 3. And similarly, does physics have more than one track?
CP Accelerated and AP.
So there are 3 there. Do they also have, so there are opportunities there for additional labs for physics?
Yep, there's a
in
5
addition?
credit, there's a 5 credit at the accelerated level and a 5 credit at the CP level. We were able to accommodate those this year.
Yeah, I'd have to.
So we have one section of the 5 credit CP and one section of the 4 credit accelerated. We were able to accommodate the students who requested that.
Right. And then the other sort of non-mainline science courses, are they also have labs associated with them, or they tend to be less lab and more text, or how does that fit into this, the lab?
Anatomy
Lab
and
design.
physiology historically was always a 5 credit class.
Which
And
means a lab
the extra
oriented-
lab to
Additional
it.
lab, yep.
Yep.
additional lab. But we don't do that.
Right, they're all now 4 credit classes. So they're still doing labs.
Yep.
The teachers particularly like the double periods for labs. You can do more,
Real continuity in the same
Yeah.
session. Yeah.
so, you know, they'll have 90 minutes. With the rotating long block in the middle of the day now, they have that chunk of time, and I think most of the science classes do labs during the long block, but they also do other labs. There's other shorter labs that happen.
No, like those classes that went from, they were historically 5 and are currently kind of 4,
Mhm.
is it directly correlated to like, you know, kind of lack of room, lack of, you know, a teacher to kind of
Personnel
do
and
that?
space related.
Yeah,
Right, the 2 things kind of go hand in hand.
yeah.
In these science areas where you want to expand the offerings, I know that in addition to space, there's such issues as ventilation and water safety and, you know, the safety chimney and stuff like that. But is there any other specialized equipment or infrastructure needed for these additional classes in biology or chemistry?
And I would defer to a certain extent to you.
I mean, beyond just the regulations having changed as far as prep space and so forth, I don't think the specialized classes require any extra lab space than their general science.
Okay, so
classes.
it's not like a new furnace.
Or a refrigerator for your anatomy classes or?
But bio also needs that, so I'm just
Right.
saying, I think there's nothing extra, but they all do.
So bio
Require
needs it
specialized
now, the
equipment.
new ones still need one, but there's.
There's
yeah.
nothing on top of that that I can
There's
think
some-
of.
Yeah, it's more
Okay.
supplies related rather than facilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like
Yeah.
a forensics class is gonna have different kinds of labs and different kinds of supplies, but it's not, it doesn't need necessarily a different kind of space.
Right, some science
It
rooms.
doesn't need anything built in.
No,
Okay.
Right.
not that,
Okay,
like a
nothing
chemistry or
associated with
physics
plumbing or
bio.
a fixed electrical service or,
Nothing that our conventional chem, physics, bio wouldn't.
okay. Okay.
But since they need it.
Right.
Yeah.
We need it. However, it's not because of the specialized
Right,
services.
okay.
And what was your comment about something changed the space for?
Well, the regulations and the recommendations, I guess, for prep spaces, I said, have
Okay.
changed, and sort of chemical storage spaces have changed since ours were designed in the 50s or whenever they were designed, so.
The other thing, I guess, so you were talking about the specialized science courses and specialized offerings, but I remember discussing previously about, I guess even the more traditional classes, because of lack of space or ventilation or room or kind of whatever, that there's some limitations on things that you would otherwise be able to do, just even in the traditional classes, just because of lack of size or equipment or kind of what have you. Correct? I mean, kind of there's still
Correct.
that, and that's not really covered in the
Not in there. I mean,
paragraph, yeah.
I mentioned a little bit in the previous one, but I mean, we have 10 science classrooms, so you know, that's 70, we've got 73 a day, so that's 70 different time slots. That's a finite number of time slots, and we're very close to hitting that finite number of time slots this year.
And how many science
And-
teachers do you have?
11 plus the 0.6, isn't it?
And just to throw a monkey wrench into things, when you're scheduling and you're thinking of rooms and you're talking about 5 credit courses, that room is then taken out for 2 periods. You can dovetail with another one, but you can't necessarily use all 70 periods.
But teachers don't teach all 7 periods?
5.
5
Teachers teach
periods.
5.
They teach 5, and there are how many periods in a day?
7.
7, okay. And how many teachers?
Is it 11 teachers? Is that right? Plus the
Pretty
0.6?
confident it's 11 plus the 0.6.
Yeah, 11, actually it's 0.8 now.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
11
Point eight,
plus
point eight,
what?
11.8.
Wait, so effectively, there's 55, 58, 59 teacher staffed opportunities to teach. So that you meet up with your staffing being short to actually fill out 70 meeting times. Is that accurate?
Right, but
Am I
remember,
hearing that right?
if I have room 107 and you have physics A period plus B on days 1 and 5, the room can't be used, the
For
room
another 4 credit
necessarily
class.
stays empty. That room could be used C and then B days 4 and 8, but you're not going to fill in those alternate periods. You can't think of a science room as necessarily having every period filled every day.
Is that because of the rotating schedule?
No.
No.
It's because of the lab class.
The extra lab,
Classes, all right.
Because you don't do lab every day.
So I was getting confused as to.
So in essence, in order to fill out your schedule, you have to marry your lab classes into the schedule in such a way so they interweave and
Yeah.
match up.
and we do
Right.
that, but where they meet 2 out of the 8 days, 2 out of the 8 days and 2 out of the 8 days, it's still, that room is still gonna be open 4 days,
Right.
that middle period.
Right.
So
Is
the
as
science,
close as you can get.
the science class that meets in different rooms on different days, that's what we did, is we essentially said, okay, because we've got a lab that meets in this classroom every 4th day, that gives us 3 periods here where she can go in, but then on
Right.
that 4th day, she's gotta go somewhere else.
Right. But in terms of a teacher teaching a double period, that's in terms of teacher contract language, that's 2 classes in terms
Correct.
of their
Yep,
activity.
AP Biology, which is a 2-period class, is considered 2
Right.
teaching periods for that teacher.
Right.
But the 5 credits not. And that's,
Well, the 5 credits considered 1.25 of the load.
That makes sense.
Right.
4 credits.
Yep.
And Dennis, how many science teachers do you have?
You said 11, right? 11.8.
11.
11 teachers.
11.8. So
11.8.
12
So
teachers.
it's 12 people, actually.
Somebody works paid.
12
Just to
people.
make sure it's
Well,
clear.
rounding up. Okay.
And
12 left.
All teachers.
10 of those people are able to teach 5 periods. One person is the department head, is able to teach 4 periods, and one person is a .8 is able to teach 4 periods.
Okay, so only 10 can do 5.
So that's what's 58,
5 and 2, can we do 4?
58 sections.
So if by magic your schedule and your space could work out, you can actually only 14 science teachers can effectively use the maxed out spaces. If you could somehow get your schedule wrapped around to do that.
Right. And that's where you start hitting the high utilization percentage where.
Right, you just can't, you have no elbow room to be flexible.
And it's particularly inconvenient, we've talked about this a couple
Yeah.
times though, for science. I was just in a science class where the teacher had to truck in all of his materials for the physics lab that he wanted to run because, you know, so I think it's
It almost
that
seems
much less to be
unreasonable to say
prepared.
that there's a dedicated room for every teacher.
There isn't.
There isn't.
There
But-
isn't one.
It sounds like you need 11 classrooms, because if you had a dedicated science class, 10, and you had shared one for one, you'd be all set.
If we had an additional science classroom, that would certainly help tremendously.
For your current program.
Right. But that additional classroom would have to be a full lab.
I mean,
Yes.
Because all of our
A fully equipped lab that could
Right.
do all the stuff that's necessary to
Right.
do during one of those double periods.
Yes.
Right. And that's what we have a shortage of. It's not just space,
That's
it's,
right.
it's having
The type of space.
the type of space. Right?
So-
Because if you had if you had more labs with greater facilities, I think you're saying that you could use up those, you'd be able to do more of the interleaving.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the current space isn't satisfying your needs anyway, so it's really not looking at what your current program is. It's looking at what your untapped opportunity. Because you said that there are kids that can't take certain classes that you're not able to
We're
accommodate.
going to have to do the 5 credits in some situations.
So,
Just because their schedule doesn't align with
Right.
the point that the particular class they want exists. For
Whoa.
example, that's one
Science
instance.
down.
Okay, well-
That's
well-
an additional.
right, no, I don't want to go there
Okay.
yet.
So we're not able to offer enough
Right. That's what
to
I'm trying
meet
to
the
get at.
requests. That's first.
Yeah.
And then we get into scheduling and maybe the English is where the lab is, so I can't take the 5th credit because of
Constraints.
constraints.
I mean, we could, like, on paper, I could say, I'm going to have Linda Peer teach in this classroom these 4 periods, and I'm going to have Maureen Dumais teach in this classroom these. I mean, I could on paper make everything work, and then say, okay, now does that actually work for the classes that the students want to take? And then the answer is no. Now, some of them just, 60 or 70% of the kids can get what they want, 30 or 40% can't because it doesn't work out with all their other requests and everything else.
But that's my concern is, we're talking about the kids that are currently in the classrooms.
Yep.
I'm concerned about the kids that wanted to be in the classrooms that are sitting out there that don't get what they want. And that's not even considering the programs that you're trying to grow.
So, 2 clarifying points on that. So one is, if a kid requests a 5-credit class and we're not able to do that, we're putting them in a 4-credit class. So they're not getting science.
No,
But there are science classes where kids requested a science class and we said, no, you can't take that science class. Now, this wouldn't be it would be an additional. So like the maritime science, which is one of the new classes, we limited that at only 25 kids could take that. So there's some kids who weren't able to take that. They're in another science class, probably in physics.
But I respect that when I'm looking, when I'm trying to get in my head, and maybe I'm at the higher level here and I haven't gotten down to where you're at. But what I'm trying to figure out
Down
is.
in the dirt line.
You're in the dirt? Don't be in the dirt. We need you. So there's a group of kids that wanted to take a 5-credit course, and I've heard it for years.
Yep.
Kids complaining, parents complaining that
Yep.
they can't take a 5-credit course.
Yep.
So those kids aren't being satisfied.
Correct.
So even if you put them in a 4-credit course, they
Correct.
wanted the extra lab, STEM.
And we would love to give them
So-
the extra.
Right.
lab.
Here's a very good example, because I think chemistry is in some ways the worst, because you need the hood for the labs and everything. So think of the kids who are taking mostly honors stuff, and then they get to chemistry and it's like, I like science, but I'm really better at math and blah, 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 blah. So I want to take accelerated 5-credit chemistry.
And they can't.
I can't because I need to take it the same time that the AP chemistry kids are
Right.
taking, because those kids are in my math class, my English class, and my AP history class, and my honors foreign language and everything. So, or conversely, the kid who's in all those other classes and taking AP Chem and decides that that's just too much. And they can't take accelerated 5 credit, which would be the logical step down from AP. They either take accelerated 4 credit or
Right, right.
And
By
based
too much-
on what you were saying, like from listening to you for years, it's band has always been a huge, huge problem with those extra credits for the extra sciences.
And that is not the only, but one of the driving factors behind offering this new 5-credit honors biology. Because if you offer the AP biology, you just knocked out 2 periods, you're done. But if you do the honors biology 5 credit, you're still taking an advanced level science class, but you can do wellness opposite the honors biology, so then that leaves you the period free to
I
be able to
wondered
do
why
it.
you did that. I was like, why are they doing that?
That was one of the reasons.
Trying to jury rig it.
That's okay.
Well,
I mean,
give
trying to
kids-
work with what you have.
Trying to give kids options.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, one of the, like, on school committee, one of the big factors that they used to ask all the time was, what is the percentage of kids that don't get what they want? And the number had been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Are we going the other way now?
Yeah.
I would
Because we
say
get stuck
on
here about the
the
noise.
core side, on core academic, well, it depends. So, I mean, when you throw in like the 5 credit versus 4 credit, yes, we've got kids who are not getting that. In terms of other core academic classes, we're remarkably good at being able to fill those. In electives, it becomes a much lower number. For a variety of reasons, but space is definitely going to constrain.
Are you under 10%?
Are we under 10%?
Because I think
Oh, yeah.
we hit 6%.
Oh, yeah, we're,
When I think historically, and I've been here for 17 years or something, we went through a period where the high school lost staff. And we had kids who weren't getting we didn't have staff. And I think you probably heard principals coming up saying, we need staff. We're also in the growing enrollment time. So we are doing a good job at getting kids booked into classes. Do I think they're all getting what they want? Not necessarily. Are they fairly well booked? Yes.
that's a good way of saying it.
And you said fairly well booked and your classes are full?
Their schedules are
Schedules.
full.
They're-
The student schedules are
To a
full.
certain extent. That although 25 credit is kind of the,
We
and going beyond 25 credits can be challenging.
right.
So part of what you're saying, or I'm taking what you're saying is that they may not get the desired course, but they spill over into the same kind of course, same course, but a different level.
I mean-
And so they're taking,
Not always. Not always.
except perhaps for electives especially.
Especially electives, but not always. Maybe I wanted physics and couldn't get it. I took anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's when we talk scheduling, there's a variety of reasons. We can't say it's just space or just this or just this or just this.
But for the cores, I mean, it's a single-digit percentage of kids who aren't getting the core class that they,
Very focused.
It's challenging, but you guys are being successful, basically.
for
you-
the
if you
core,
know the single
for the core,
digits.
I mean, Power School is a great program too. I mean, that's the thing, like, it's,
Yeah.
we plug it all in and Power School makes it work. On the elective side, there's a lot more of, I wanted this course and I didn't get it.
But on the core, go ahead.
You have the data for the core, but you measure it on the other?
Yeah, we get it.
Sounds
I
like you're
mean-
not quite sure on the other, so
Well,
you're
you're
not really
trying-
measuring it?
You're asking for a percentage, and the percentage that we're gonna get would be against requests. And that's going to include, I requested team sports, can't get team sports, I'm in strength training. Did you feel the kid's elective or not? No, I mean, yes,
That's
but
what I'm
is the
saying.
computer who's looking at straight requests counting it as a fail? So, I couldn't hand you a specific number. I could tell you what my days are like changing courses in the spring when the schedule comes out and in the fall.
But then you've got the added, I mean, even just with the science, I mean, do you have science classes in some of these electives, like maybe not some of the new ones, where the numbers in the classroom are small?
In some, yeah.
What?
Like
Because
molecular gastronomy has a relatively small number, but that's
But it's
largely
full.
driven by, it's full, but that's largely driven by space availability.
What's small? What's the number?
It's capped at 16 because of the kitchen,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's in the kitchen.
because it's in the kitchen.
Was
Um,
it like a cooking class?
It's the art
It's a
of
combination.
food and science.
Cool.
So it's
That is cool.
science,
I
science
like the
and,
name.
yeah. But that had more requests. That's capped by
So it,
the size.
You will
so how often
sometimes,
do you use the kitchen? I mean, I would think you could fill that all day long.
Yes.
the
But we
kitchen
have
is
other
used
folks.
all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we teach foods classes that are in the kitchen.
Okay, so, all right, so there is still one.
There are also, there'll be times when the number will be low, and I'll give you an example. AP Biology has 2 sections, and they have relatively small numbers, maybe like 15 kids in a section, because 30 kids register for AP Biology.
That's
You
it.
can't have more than 25 kids in the class.
Yeah.
So there was kind of a decision point, do we want to run one section of AP Biology and tell 5 kids you can't do it?
Right.
Or do we figure out a way to make it work, and you run 2
Yeah.
sections of AP Biology, and everybody gets to take
Welcome to
AP
my life.
Biology, you can request it.
I'm going to change the subject for a really quick. Did anybody in AP Biology, was there anybody that you could have bumped up from, from the lower classes so they could experience an AP Biology?
So there are kids who requested honors biology who probably would have been fine in AP Biology, but they requested honors biology for a specific reason.
Okay.
And in some cases, that reason was they wanted the flexibility to be able to take band or other electives. In some cases, it was, I don't want to have to deal with the workload of an AP class, and honors is still going to be a heavy workload, but it's not a double period class. In some cases, it was just, I think AP may be a bridge too far for me. We try,
So
our
when you-
AP numbers have, within the sciences have gone up pretty generally over
Oh,
the
good.
years.
Yes,
That-
they
that's
they
good.
absolutely have. And AP Biology is not one of those where, there's sophomores taking an AP class to begin with. There's no intro bio. You leap right into the whole thing. The teachers are very good about encouraging kids who are
To move
interested
up.
in that AP bio.
So just out of curiosity, are you noticing males or females? Or is it just equal mix? Just curious.
I think it's an equal mix.
Okay. No, I just
And I
think
wouldn't,
the sciences are going up.
Yeah. I think plenty of girls. Plenty of girls. That I know for sure.
So for the core, did I misunderstand what you said? So for the core classes, there's single digit kind of students that
Percentage who are not getting what
not
they,
getting
what they are requesting.
what they requested, or a core equivalent class
What they specifically
what they
requested.
specifically
Single digit
requested,
percentage
okay.
who are not getting the specific core class that they requested. Now, in some places, it's not, you're not talking about particularly specialized courses. You're
Except for
talking,
the five credit.
in English, you're not, you're talking about the level, but it's not, you're not talking about individually specialized courses. In social studies, sophomore year social studies, there are probably some who aren't getting it because sophomores in social studies take 2 different classes each semester. They take U.S. History one semester, and then there are a variety of different classes they can take. So you will have some kids who won't be able to get that class, but it's going to be a relatively small number. In math, it's relatively straightforward, so very high ability to fulfill those. In foreign language, we've got very high ability to fill those.
Meaning of space in the sections.
I mean, the
or
kids are
opportunity.
getting what they're requesting.
I see.
In science, it becomes a little bit more specialized, so you might have less of a hit rate there. But generally, yes, it's a small percentage of students who aren't getting the specific class that they requested within cores.
So even though overall it's single digits, a large component of that is coming out of the sciences.
I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers carefully enough on that to be able to.
Well, I'm just,
But logically, because there's selections, English, like everybody takes American Lit junior year, so when you get English, it's American Lit. When you get to be a junior or a senior, there's physics, there's anatomy, there's chemistry, entomology. I mean, we have some of the semester classes too. Those get harder because there's fewer sections. There's 5 sections of accelerated American Lit, you're probably going to get one.
okay.
If there's 2 sections
Right.
of 5 credit accelerated chemistry, you might not get one.
Right, but, and I'm going just off of the anecdotal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, And then the other thing I would just, I'm sorry, we're talking about the chorus, but I want you to keep in mind that many of our kids are like serious musicians, and music is considered a core for those kids, or serious art students, and art is considered a core, and we're scheduling around where that advanced art course meets. Do you know what I mean? And then, so
we can expect to see this in other areas in the coming years.
I think so.
Okay.
So that particular problem with music and art happens because there are fewer opportunities to actually get into, to be in a classroom for those particular things, and therefore there are fewer opportunities to let your schedule work.
I had,
Work with that, is that
there's,
correct?
right, there's one period where I can take, say, advanced drawing and painting, and then I'm in German, so there's only one period where there's a German 3, and I'm accelerated math, I have 3 or 4 periods of that. English, I have 2 periods of this, and, you know, my science is taking these 2 periods. And because we have the levels and kids can play to their strengths, there's no such thing as a vanilla schedule that most kids get. Everything is individualized. And the kids who are serious musicians, we're scheduling around their music classes.
So metaphorically, it's kind of similar to electives, except this is a population that has a very particular set of electives, you might say.
Right, they consider it a core.
Way to describe it?
They'll give up social studies if they need to be there, or whatever, you know, it happens to be. You can't give up English, can't give up math. Science is trickier. Social studies sometimes they'll play with. You know, it.
But they're giving it up because of lack of space, lack of teachers.
Schedule.
But it's just the schedule. It
Yeah.
really happened anyways.
No.
It might have happened anyways, because if there's, I mean, it depends on how many.
It's
if
all,
there's only
the
gonna be one
resources
class
are
of
all
that
hooked
anyway.
together. It's
Yeah.
not, you know,
It's both
There's
Because
a
keep in
faculty
mind-
and a space issue.
Yeah.
10 years ago, we didn't have as many art teachers, didn't have as many art classes. The art rooms were emptier. So then that art class might have been in a period where it fit better. Now, when the computer is building, it's not just building where's the best place I can put this. I don't need to worry about rooms. Now it's going, ooh, and I have to have a room available to be able to put this here.
Right.
And I can't put it where I want it because then that means ceramics goes here and nobody who wants ceramics can get it this period, so ceramics has to go here, so at least 3 of the kids who want this advanced art course, it goes here. But then there's 4 kids and these happen to be 2 of them where it's their core.
Some of the scheduling issues you're gonna have, even if we had.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm not trying to minimize.
Oh,
at
no,
all.
high school schedule is incredibly complicated. You're trying to accommodate, 1,100 kids' individual interests and, yeah, I mean,
But
there's-
as the rooms fill, you've
You can't always
added
get
an
what you want.
additional constraint.
You have, but I think, just to be fair to what Jody said earlier about art and music classes, there's a lot of kids. And core, when you go to high school, you have to get a core curriculum, right? Your core classes have to be satisfied, but there are kids who don't feel like they fit anywhere but in those art and music classes. And I know a lot of people view those as elective classes, but for those kids, it's who they are. So for us not to have an appropriate complement for the population in the school is something we need to consider beyond just, well, they're electives. And not because my kids are that way.
Well, I would throw business.
My kids are in
I was just gonna add
Right.
business.
We've had huge
I saw
enrollment
that.
growth in
Yeah.
business. We just had a big business event happening in the auditorium the other day through DECA that was unbelievable. I mean, we had something like 25 different business members from the community come in, and students were presenting different business ideas that they generated through their business classes and through the DECA program, which is the after-school program, to these business leaders, getting feedback from them about it because they're going to go to a regional competition around this in like the next month. I mean, it was unbelievable.
They're all
Kids
dressed in suit and
they're dressed in
tie.
suit and tie, they're dressed in dresses and skirts. and-
DECA stands for?
Distributed education, it's always been called DECA. It's the business organization, and it's highly supported by business people. And the kids have gone to nationals before competition, and kids who have come out of the woodwork that were just kind of going through high school and they found their niche. I can't support the business program any stronger. I've seen kids come to life and find kind of their piece there. Feeling really successful, really competent, really on top of things. They might not be superstars in science or in math, but they've, you know, this kind of gets into emotional intelligence and all your different types of intelligence, and this, they go with it. They can think on their feet, they can problem solve, they can come up with that solution or present that project, that business proposal. They do it well. They've gotten great recognition for such a young program. And I think it's outstanding. I would expand it in a heartbeat.
Where is that? Because I read that, but Perry, where is that? Because I read,
Expanded
oh, it's
business
right here,
program.
expanded business program.
Lynn, by the way, 28 kids in AP Bio, 16 male, 12 female this year.
Oh, bummer.
Do you want me to keep going with?
Yeah.
So the next thing I have is curriculum support courses. So we added a new curriculum support. These are non-special ed curriculum support courses. They're open to any student. So we added one this year, Math Foundations, which has so far appears to be very successful. I'd be very interested in adding kind of an English language arts version of that for next year. These necessarily need to have small enrollment because you're talking about very individualized support for students. This is not their core English class or their core math class. It's in addition to. So it's primarily for students who struggle in these areas and trying to support them. For you, it's we're on page 3.
Page 3.
Page 3. But having small numbers of kids means that that's not particularly efficient utilization of space. It's great from a curriculum standpoint, from a teaching and learning standpoint, but not particularly efficient utilization of space. And so
Meaning that they end up using a large classroom just
right,
because it's available.
Right. Well, yeah, we don't have really many alternatives to a standard size. Most of our classrooms are very standard sized classrooms. We don't have like a nice space for 12 kids. It's the same space that you would be using for 25 kids. So I would love to add a writing lab next year as well. So that's one of the things that we've seen in analyzing our MCAS scores, which are very strong, is that our kids, one of the places where we tend to not outperform the state particularly well is in writing. And I would love to be providing writing support for kids, not just within their English writing, but across the board. I'd love for kids, as they're writing a social studies paper, to have opportunities to get more specialized support in that. But again, when I put on my kind of space utilization hat, that's not just efficient utilization of space. So that can prevent us from being able to do those sorts of things. The business program has grown tremendously. I would love to add, we have one full-time business teacher.
Back to curriculum support courses. How many do you have right now?
So right now we're running Math Foundations, and it runs for the entire year, every other day, 2 sections.
class?
So it's 2 sections of the same class.
So 2 sections are 2 periods?
2 sections.
Yes.
They
Every
alternate.
other day
They alternate.
for the whole year, twice.
So a section is like I have this class A period, that's a section.
Okay.
Another teacher has the same class, B period, that's another section of the same course. So we have 2 sections of that course, and sections of Math Foundations run every other day for the full year. So it's a 2-credit course.
And this is accommodating 50 kids?
No, this
small.
accommodates 25 kids or so
Just 25.
across 2 sections. Again, because we want to have small numbers of kids in there, because it's very individual.
So in terms of space utilization, it's the full-time equivalent of one class.
Classroom.
Correct.
Now, this is the one that you just started, right?
Correct. That's the
And
one
you
we're
want to
doing.
increase this to how many?
I don't know that I want to add more Math Foundation sections necessarily, because I don't know if we have the need for more Math Foundations. I want to add an English equivalent class.
And for that group of people, can you characterize the population in any general way, or is it very scattered as to how it turns out that these people are very helped by
It's
that?
very hard to categorize them. I mean, demographically, it's hard to characterize them.
It's mostly freshmen.
Yeah, so
targeted.
we're targeting primarily freshmen. I would like to make sure that we're providing this for sophomores. We have some sophomores in there this year. I'd like to see if we can maybe pull in a few more sophomores next year. Kids who struggled in 9th grade math in particular.
They were often identified by their 8th grade teacher as having struggled there and then using MCAS data.
So I would say the most common thing across them is that they have some real gaps in terms of their math ability. And that could be for a variety of different reasons. They could have some sort of a disability that impacts their math. It could be because they have have not had consistent schooling. They bopped around between different schools, so for a variety of reasons.
Right.
But that's the common denominator.
And that speaks a little bit to reaching down into the next level of the district schools in terms of, are there some kinds of limits to being able to aid challenged kids so that they can arrive at high school in better shape? Maybe, that could be a separate topic to talk after you've gone through your report, but I think that may be
So
useful.
you're advocating that in middle school?
Yeah, I'm saying, is there a way that
Well, the summer
we
school.
can help to aid these kids before they show up in high school
They have
in a
that in
way
middle
that,
school?
in a way that
I think the middle school work
Yeah.
relieves the high school a little bit,
Yeah.
given what's going on at the high school.
We have a different model at the, I would call it
Yeah.
plus at the middle school, so, but it's
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, the
principle.
same idea of providing additional curriculum support
Yeah.
for students who
Would it make sense to run that in the summer?
They do that in the summer too. There's extra help in the summer.
Yeah, but that wouldn't necessarily go to these kids. These are kids that are doing fine. They just,
I think the benefit of having it concurrent to a class is that it allows the students who might struggle in the sort of conventional, whatever math class, the extra support that they would need at the same time. So these foundational concepts, sometimes in the summer, they're kind of taught in isolation, and the student doesn't really develop this ability to transfer them to whatever math class that
So
they're taking at the
practicing
core.
them, you mean.
Practicing or relating them in another way. They do a lot of
Right.
hands-on work. And I think the concurrency helps with that in terms of being able to relate back to that conventional math class that that student's also taking in a way that it wouldn't in the summer.
I would love to do some summer stuff too.
In
if we
addition,
could.
yeah.
The tough thing is the kids that you want to come and do that during the summer are not the kids who finish coming and doing that during the summer.
why is that?
I think it's for a lot of different reasons. Part of it is the kids who you want to come do this are the kids who've struggled in math historically, probably don't like math a whole heck of a lot. And so when you say, would you like to come during the summer and do math? They tend to
give up
say,
your summer.
do I have to?
Well, I don't know, if you made it fun and it got out there. I can see them going.
Okay, can we?
So, I mean, it's,
I think it's still there.
and I'm not saying it's not doable, it's just there are lots of barriers to getting the students that you want to come and do, math kind of support stuff over the course of the summer.
Yeah.
I own them during the year. I mean, they're there, they're captive audience.
I own them.
So I can,
And,
Don't print them.
and I think what Martina's saying is really critical, because I have heard that this plays out, that what they're doing in their math class, yet the foundational concepts are being supported in that math
Yep.
foundations course.
No, makes sense.
So the conversation that can occur is, the teacher says this in the class, I can't figure this out. Can you help me
yep.
tomorrow
Yes.
for this thing? That's
Or-
all.
They've allocated a little bit of time during class, but what they've really done is decided this set of skills, it's around equation solving and everything to do with that is so foundational to everything that student needs to do in the future that we're just going to go so in depth that that student has a really solid foundation so that everything they see in their conventional math class can build upon this deep understanding of those concepts.
Step in this.
And they also integrate that. They're working at grade level actually, but they're integrating the fraction concepts and stuff that the
Yeah, you
students
don't
did
catch that
miss.
fourth grade, you don't.
Yeah.
I get it. You can make it go.
And I think what you were talking about adding was an English
Yes.
version of
An
this.
English equivalent of that.
An English equivalent.
High school kids are, in math, it's hard to fake it and get by because it's pretty clear that you didn't get the right answer. In an English class, kids become phenomenally adept at faking it.
Inept?
Adept.
Oh, adept. I was gonna say, wait a minute.
Adept.
Yeah.
Your future salesman. Absolutely.
Future salesman.
Absolutely.
And I would say, from a guidance perspective, I think that if we had a similar writing lab, but for juniors and seniors who are strong writers and want to take it to the next level, we would have high enrollment in that.
Can you say a sentence about that adeptness? Just
What?
how do you cover that you
You
can't
BS.
perform? But if you have to write a paper, how do you actually?
Well, so it comes out in your writing to a certain extent, but so a teacher might be able to see that a kid doesn't have particularly good writing skills, although also a nice way to avoid that is just don't turn in the paper. And then it becomes about
Then it becomes a
work
grade issue,
production as
right?
opposed
Yes.
to actual skills. And what I've found is that, writing skills can be somewhat evident, but it's the reading skills oftentimes that are kids are very good at hiding that because it's very difficult to see each individual kid reading level. We do a fair amount of that at the, or a significant amount of that at the elementary level, and I would imagine a fair amount of that at the middle school level too, but by the high school level, you're not testing kids' reading abilities, they're reading to learn, and so you just keep moving forward, and so it's very easy. Kids have learned how to talk to, I'm not really sure, and so you move on to the next person because you've only got so much time in class. So kids are very adept at not showing that they...
Evasiveness in class, you
Yeah.
might say.
Redirection.
And there's a
Right.
lot of being able to figure out what's going on from the discussion in class.
Right, we do our reading at home, we discuss in class, we pull together concepts, pull out pieces of plot, talk about literary elements, and Bill, who hasn't done the reading, gets the gist of what's going on.
Yeah.
Got good at reading.
Yes, again, as guidance, I would love a reading comprehend, same thing, but for reading comprehension, I think would be outstanding.
Business is a prominent example. We've seen that enrollment grow tremendously. I would love to add, we have one business teacher right now, Stavros Andropoulos, and I would love to add another business teacher. I have no idea where I would put a business teacher. No idea whatsoever.
Is he teaching 5 classes?
Oh, yeah. And we had significant enrollment, significant requests for business classes that we were not able to fill. I think we had twice as many requests for introduction to business classes we were able to fill this year.
Intro to business, we had 122 requests, so 75 kids did not get it.
How do you decide who gets it, who doesn't? Is
I
it
don't,
lottery?
thank you God, no, the
Or
computer does it.
Oh,
The computer
Our
does it.
school figures it out.
Oh, good.
You can put in some parameters, so you can say favor seniors, favor juniors, but Power School, and a lot of it is a product of which kids was the best fit for the schedule.
The 75 that didn't get it, would they be able to participate in DECA?
We tried very hard to get them into some kind of a business
So
course.
similar.
But I did have some kids who this fall were, I want to be in DECA, I'm not in a business course.
I think Stavros was willing, because you're supposed to be enrolled in a business course in order to be able to be eligible for DECA, and that's not a Neshoba
National.
rule, that's a national rule. And I can't remember, I believe we said that, like, if they're taking a business course spring semester, we were going to be able to kind of fudge it and
We're
let them
trying very
participate.
hard because DECA's so,
So it's the only business class that you have? There's
No.
nothing
Oh, no, we have a
single?
variety of business
Because you have like
classes.
stock and stuff, right?
We've got,
there's
Accounting.
personal finance, there's entrepreneurship in the stock market, there's accounting, there's marketing, sports and entertainment marketing, which we didn't run, marketing, community partnerships.
So as long as they're in one of those, they can be in DECA?
Yes.
But did anybody that didn't get into the business program or class and they were put into a different one, were they really upset about it? I mean, to the point where they said, no, forget it, or?
Oh, no, they wouldn't say no, forget it. That I don't think that they're thrilled when they don't get their first choice class necessarily.
Is it one that they might have taken the following semester? They just
Maybe.
didn't get it the following, it's
Maybe.
not the year they wanted? I mean, I'm just wondering,
right,
did
so a
they
kid,
eventually get it?
a kid who signs, I mean, it depends also. If you're a freshman and you wanted to get intro to business, you didn't get it, you got 3 more years to get it, yeah, you're going to be able to get it at some
Okay.
point. But there are a fair number of kids who wanted to get a business class and weren't able to get it. And there are lots of kids who take one business class and want to be able to take more, but aren't necessarily able to.
Yes.
And is it intro to business a prerequisite for some of the other ones, or
We try to be flexible about that as a prerequisite, recognizing that,
the scheduling?
I mean, Stavros could have filled his entire schedule just with intro to business.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular about the classroom for those courses
Technology access is nice.
Those are computers, basically. You want a
We don't
computer room?
have desktop computers. He uses, he'll bring in Chromebook carts on a regular basis. There is some accounting software that's specialized. So access to technology is nice because they're going to be doing a lot of business plan writing and research. But that's not, it would be great if there was technology always available to him, but we're kind of making do with having Chromebook carts.
Right, and just, he's got I have the guidance Chromebook cart in there, and he has talked about it's been a tremendous boon for him because when the kids are done with the test, they can grab a Chromebook and be working on their DECA project. Business really is a class that I would love to see have permanently housed computers.
I would imagine that class is very collaborative also in terms of just flexible space needs.
Yes, and we talked about that a year ago, having, sort of small collaborative student work areas where 3 and 4 kids can get together and work on a project. And much of what DECA is about is joint projects, and a lot of research, putting things together, sharing things. Technology is key. Working together is key.
So where a classroom desires having computers, in business being one, I guess computer science related things being another.
Yep.
What are the impediments to just saying, okay, we're going to convert a classroom to having computers? What makes
Just
that
took it out
hard
of
and easy?
rotation. You
Sorry?
took it out of the rotation. So that classroom is no longer.
So it's no longer available. It knocks down seven periods that the class, only particular kinds of classes can hit that classroom.
Correct. I mean,
Right.
Right, Stavros' room has English classes in it, I think, right?
I think it does.
Yeah. So when he's not in there, an English teacher is in there.
Right.
Because of the utilization, it would almost be if you could just tack on an extra room to the side of the school, then it wouldn't impact your other things and let you add.
Oh yeah,
these
if we
other
could
elements.
just add a computer lab next to what's currently there, that would be fantastic. Because the moment you take an existing classroom and convert it to a computer lab, then it's out of the rotation for scheduling classes in there. I mean, we've like the English department, we've talked about having a space in the English department that could be like a writing lab space that kids could then rotate through, but then that classroom's out of the rotation. So teachers are taking their regular classes and going in there.
You're
but that-
migrating and coming out over the
But-
course of
But that
weeks
class
and
has to
months.
still be scheduled somewhere. Every class still has to be scheduled, in a space, so it doesn't, you take the class out.
Is there a means to kind of understand, I'm sure it's a lot of the stuff impacts other things, but trying to have an understanding if you'd like to kind of get all these different things done, and it might be, kind of pie in the sky, just sticking rooms onto the building, but like, how many rooms would you have to add, would you need to kind of be able to accommodate, kind of these, what's the end result of, are you short 10 rooms, 15 rooms, 20, I mean, kind of what would it take to do these things?
So what's somebody going to say? So in the report, the other report, I think we talked about 5 or 6 classrooms, kind of general use classrooms, would help the utilization tremendously. And an additional science lab would help utilization tremendously. Additional computer lab space would help tremendously. Art classroom, 3 art classrooms is great, but the size of the classrooms, because the current size of the classroom constrains some of the things that you're able to do.
Are you describing what the 6 classrooms would be, or are you saying in addition to 6 classrooms, you would like these other classrooms?
I'm saying 6 general use classrooms, and then I'm talking about other things. But I think 6 was the number, if I remember correctly. 6
Yeah.
general use
Yeah.
classrooms kind of got to the space
Yeah.
utilization.
But there's a lot more than 6. 6 just brings utilization kind of to a more
Right.
manageable spot, and then all these other things you look to
Correct.
expand or do whatever would have additional needs that
Yep.
would.
I mean, like getting to, courses requiring computer access, where it's not just bringing in Chromebooks, which are great, but only have limited software functionality. Having more computer labs with specialized software allows more things to run. Theater arts, having a general use classroom doesn't help us with theater arts courses. A general use classroom doesn't help us with specialized wellness courses. Could help with things like journalism courses. Could help with things like curriculum support courses. Doesn't help with things like specialized space. So yeah, 5 or 6 general use classrooms would certainly help, but then there's lots of other specialized spaces that we would want to be able to do the things we want to.
But we would be able to, without maybe some exactness to it, but you'd be able to characterize, in the write-up that you did,
Yep.
and, doing this stuff to, almost like an estimate of like what you would
Yep.
need to
Yep.
implement this stuff. If you
Yep.
kind of said, if we wanted to implement this, this is what we would need.
Yep, I could get to that. I could certainly get from here to there with a more expanded, here's what we hope for, and here's what that would mean space-wise. Yep.
But then you'd have to revamp your science labs still, right? Because they're not up to safety code, and then weren't there issues with the gym and
So I mean,
Media center.
so I think you've got both
Yeah.
quantity of space and then the way the quality of the space or the way the space is currently configured.
Yeah.
Are two different, connected to two different things.
yes,
Right, we talked the media center,
media center, yeah.
not being a real learning commons. You can't see the whole area. Much of it is taken up by the server rooms.
And the guidance suite and
Yeah. There's a variety of places where we're squished in and we're
What do you use
there.
the media center as? I mean, is it just a library? I mean, what is it?
Classrooms go up there. There's a
They
learning
change.
commons space. There's a computer lab. There's a number of computers where kids are up there working independently during their study. There's a silent area where kids are working silently, alone, and then there's kind of quiet discussion area where you'll have kids working together.
So it's not really a library, it's just a,
You know, it's 8:15. We're only halfway through this document. Clearly, this is something we're not going to exhaust tonight. But I would recommend that we continue through this document tonight and put it on an agenda to come back in more detail. And maybe we can discuss that at the end of the meeting when we want to get back to this. But I would like to make sure we get through this tonight, and I don't know if we're going to get to Bill.
He'll be back.
I'll be back. Okay, but
I have one more question on expanded business. You say you wanted new personnel. So is that hiring somebody or having some teacher transfer and do something
Hiring
else?
somebody.
So you actually want to hire?
I mean, that's one of the things I would love to be able to do, to fulfill
There's no
the.
space left.
I try to start with, what do we need, and I will try to figure out the space somehow. I'm running out of
Because
ideas.
you only get 10% empty space, right?
Less than that. I think we're at 93% utilization.
Okay.
And I'm anticipating we're gonna have higher enrollment again next year than we have this year.
Based on everyone in the 8th grade or just traditionally?
Based on the numbers coming in, and for example, the junior class is bigger than the senior class, and the junior class ages up to become seniors. You've got a bigger class replacing the senior class.
Dr. Grimm, for the people who don't understand what 93% utilization means, can you put some perspective around that? Because the layperson, and not necessarily, but the layperson hears 93% and they say, well, you still have 7% to
Right,
play
right.
with.
Oh, that's
So
great.
could you?
That's
well,
an
yeah.
A.
So could you explain what the inferences and the implications of that are?
So, and I know the MSBA is a word that has, people feel differently about, but I think the MSBA's recommendation in that sense is at least a good place to start. Like, is it 80% or 85%?
85.
85% utilization, because as you start getting to higher and higher room utilization, where you can put classes starts to change, and so then what students are able to take starts to change. I used the science example earlier. Like, I could sit down with a spreadsheet and I could say, I've got 7 periods and I've got these 11 teachers and they each teach 5 classes, and I'm just going to randomly put them in, and I can fill their name into all those boxes. But then kids aren't going to be able to get classes with those teachers.
So it constrains the class.
It constrains the
selection.
ability for us to give kids the classes that they want to be able to take and assign teachers appropriately to those kids.
Well, not all classrooms are the same, is the issue here.
And that's part of the issue as well. That's an additional issue too.
So the remaining 7% are not interchangeable classrooms.
Yep.
And even sometimes, they could be. It could be that, there's a general use classroom that, and the space isn't being filled one period, and you could have an English class in there, but that English class couldn't have gone in that period because that's not when people would have been able to take that class. And then some of those classes, as you say, are specialized classrooms. So, I'm not going to put an English class in a science classroom. I have put math classes in science classrooms, but I put English classes in science classrooms.
But it's really the variability of everyone's schedule that the 93% kind of really impacts, because it's not just a one-for-one class. It's them taking all these other things, and all those other things kind of interlace with each
You're trying
other
to
to
get
kind of get all those variables. So it's impossible to get 100% Because unless you're dictating what everyone's exactly doing,
And that's the right word, dictating. What dictates the schedule? Right now, what we make dictate the schedule is what the classes that students want to take. And the higher the utilization percentage, the less you're able to accommodate the classes that students want to take. The more you turn into what dictates it is space availability, as opposed to student requests.
And a piece of this, remember, is that we do not have a vanilla program. It's not like all the freshmen come in and take the same thing, all the sophomores come in and take the same thing, all the juniors come in and take the same thing. Many high schools do that. They have a very vanilla program. You don't have many options. We have things like options. Freshmen can choose between engineering the future, environmental science, and physics with engineering applications. If we want to get more vanilla, that
No,
loose.
we don't.
Okay.
We can't.
But
We don't,
But
because
that's the
that's gonna
trade-off.
impact
Right.
how
But-
we're viewed by the state and other.
Well, and it
entities, isn't
impacts the kids' experience that comes
Right,
through. I
right.
think our kids have a very rich
And the offerings
set
that
of
we're-
offerings in all the departments, and it's feeding their strengths and their desires, and I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a bear to schedule, and it makes all of the constraints even more. Like you said, a room is not a room is not a room. When you have those 3 science classes all need distinctly different rooms.
Right.
Can I just ask one real quick question on this utilization? If you say 93% utilization, are you saying that out of the however many periods and how many classrooms, that it's 93% of
yes.
the classrooms are filled over that
Yes.
whole periods times number of teachers times classrooms?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. It's exactly what
Okay, should we go on to computer access before somebody asks another question?
So I think I touched upon that already, the idea that we have more and more classes that require specialized software and require computers available, things like digital photography, journalism, video game design. We're looking to add advanced placement computer programming class, not next year, but the following year. We added more computer science classes this year, and they come with specialized software that you need. You can get high-end laptops, which are very expensive, or you can get desktops, which are much less expensive, but still allow you to do the software. But you need specialized computer space in order to be able to do that.
These computer rooms, are they all interchangeable?
No. What'd you say?
No.
Okay.
So the rooms themselves are interchangeable?
No, but once you've got the desks topped in there and the software's loaded,
Right.
can anybody use them, or can any class use them?
Oh,
or
no. So
is
we-
it just a subset?
We
Okay.
have computer labs that are specifically scheduled for compute classes that use computers. So video game design class is going to be scheduled in a room, graphics classes are scheduled in a room, and we have those classes those computer rooms are only being used for classes that are scheduled directly into that room. Then we have some other computer labs that are for general use. So I'm an English teacher, and we're doing a research project, and so I want to take my kids down to the computer lab because they're going to be doing research. I can check out there are computer labs that are specifically available for teachers to check out.
Okay.
What's happened is that because as our number of classes increases that need computers daily, they have started to cannibalize the space that's usually available for teachers to go and check out for general use. So we now started scheduling labs that used to be generally available to any teacher who wanted to sign up. We now are scheduling computer-based courses daily into those classes.
Okay.
There's
But-
also classes that come into that just because the space is available, like there was an English class running in the drafting room.
Okay, but, and I want to make sure I understand this, so I'm going to try to put it in my words.
Yep.
So you've got some classes that are basically on dedicated machines because they need the high-speed
Correct.
graphics and da-da-da-da, but those are not, I'm teaching science and I need this particular, but these are, that's the whole course, is to go use
Yep.
those computers in those rooms. And then you've got these other labs where basically anybody can walk in and they can be used for physics, they can be used for chemistry, they can be used for English, they can be used for French.
Correct.
Okay. And on your bullet point here, multiple courses requiring computer access, Are you talking about both kinds, or are you talking about the more general purpose?
No, I'm talking, maybe I should have said it, I'm talking about the classes that need to have computer access daily in order to be able to run the course.
Okay.
AP Computer Science.
Okay.
So a computer programming class, they need daily access to computers. That's what I meant by that.
Okay. So this is dedicated computer.
Yep, so require dedicated computer access, is that a better way
Yeah.
of saying it?
So over time, we've had the tragedy of commons, where this common resource is being
Yes.
used up as additional courses figure out how to make use of the resource. And then it gets, the commons is disappearing as the classes fill the
And
space.
we have tried to address that oftentimes very effectively through things like Chromebook carts, which is, a cart with 30 Chromebooks, and so those get wheeled around. And what we found is that the more we buy, the more they get used. Our utilization numbers on our Chromebook carts and our general use computer labs is incredibly high.
But isn't that what happens basically in a lot of your areas? So if you see a new need and you're trying to be creative in getting a space, cannibalizing something
Yes.
to get that. So something getting kicked out generally to kind of accommodate someone. So you're
Yes.
kind of looking at it saying, someone's there, there's this need, I think this need's more important, it's going to supersede that, we're going to displace whatever was there before, whether it was a room or divvying things
Yes.
in two or carving out space in the media center or kind of whatever, that happens
Yes.
repeatedly.
And I'll give you two concrete examples of what I mean. So one of our computer labs, which we use for a variety of different courses, it's actually a well-sized room, it's 403A. I think there's a very good chance that we're going to end up cannibalizing like the back third of that room to create some office space, because it's big enough that we can make it work. And then the room in which we do, I talked about journalism and broadcasting earlier, so we have a broadcast studio, which is in kind of a small room that's also doubles as office space. There's a pretty good chance that I'm going to need to cannibalize that space if I'm adding new business courses next year. And so then the question is, where do I move my journalism class? So there's the back of one of the graphics labs, which is a computer lab that's dedicated for daily use for graphics classrooms. Behind that, there's kind of a small office space with an old dark room. So I might have to look at that space as like my journalism space, which would be horrible. Don't you tell Jeff.
No, I won't. And that was,
everybody
when
watch
they
you
did the
tell.
renovation, we had planned on having photography. And so what it is a workroom, dark room back there. It's an incredibly tiny space in the back of another classroom. That's the only access is through through the graphics lab to get there.
Right, so there's not a door to go in there other than going through another classroom to get there. So yes,
But that's unsafe.
it is
Yep.
constant cannibalization of one space for something else.
And the 403A might be big, but it's the drafting board. So that's architectural drawing, that's engineering drawing, things like that. A lot happens on computers, but taking out some of that space is going to necessarily mean you can't have 16, 18 kids doing architectural drawing because you're not going to have the boards anymore. You're going to have to fundamentally change things. So there's
And
a cost.
We've talked about a lot of that stuff, but I don't know if some of that stuff kind of comes up as things get written, from someone that's been involved. It almost sounds like, they're making things work, like it's, all hunky-dory kind of whatever. And you are trying to make things work as best you can with the, what you have.
Well, 1,100 kids are going to show up tomorrow, so we
Yeah.
have to figure out how to make it work. So, yeah.
And I think it's important that people understand that. That you're trying to make this work.
Oh, the
Yeah.
staff does a tremendous job.
Yes.
Before we jump off of that computer part, I spent, I can't say I read every word, but last night I came into possession of this school and community profile, which I gather was taking up considerable amounts of your staff time putting this together.
Yes.
112 pages.
Is that the NIASC report? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I managed to read and highlight
God bless you.
sections of all 112 pages of it since last night. Chromebooks, I keep hearing about, come in. I guess it's a computer alternative for aardvarks like me. There's one statement in here, I was wondering if you could comment, I was puzzled. Obviously, they are an integral part of filling needs,
Yep.
given instead of full computers. In 2010, NHRH's guidance department developed an initiative to purchase a dedicated set of Google Chromebooks in order to avoid disrupting the academic use of the school's computer labs. Question on this sentence. For reasons unclear and uncommunicated, this initiative was shelved for nearly 3 years with little meaningful feedback. I gather you have them now. What took 3 years to get them?
I think just working through technology and different goals for what were we going to do for, was the Google, was the Chromebook, or I had looked at iPads for a while. Thing is, so guidance develops seminars, we're working with kids in classrooms, we're using computers, so we're in the computer labs. The English teachers, the social studies teachers, people were, I think they were cursing me because I had guidance classes going on in the labs when they wanted, maybe a social studies teacher wanted to be in the lab for 3 days doing research, and I was there for one of those days. And so working through with the whole district initiative and making sure we're all on board getting the same thing. So right now, there's 3 Chrome carts in the high school. All the teachers know how to use them, so when guidance isn't using the guidance one, that's how Stavros has it for the DECA program in his classroom. They all know exactly how to use them, it's all the same thing.
This section co-chaired by Sarah Egan. Did she ever get explained during this 3-year period what the difficulty was? The inference is she wasn't. It was uncommunicated.
I'm sorry, that kind of takes us way off topic from our agenda tonight. I understand it's a good point. I read that
All right.
point.
Okay,
I'm curious
we'll come
about
back
that
to it.
also, but
We'll come back to it.
yeah.
Actually, what's also in here that is relevant is you're buying more and more computer equipment. And I'm not sure in that report, they say that there is a problem with the current network. You know, it's very, very slow. And
I would say now the network's not very, very slow, but we are at the point where if we add more stuff, it's going to significantly impact.
so has there been any research as to, where you guys are going to go in the future? I mean, what you have existing and how you're going to expand? Because if you just keep adding wireless, you have a problem.
I don't know. I don't think we have an answer right now. And that's something that's not in here that probably should be included in here.
We are this summer expanding significantly the wireless.
Do you have a plan?
I'm working with the IT department. They have actually been bringing consultants through. They've come through all the classrooms, monitored the classrooms, found out where signals are strong, where they're weak, and they do have a plan, and they've been working with me saying, we need to run feeds to this room, this room, this room, to put heads.
Yeah, they've added a significant number of access points throughout the building.
So I don't want to derail this, but this came up at the school committee meeting last night. And because I've heard from various different people that the IT structure is brittle. So if we're adding more students bringing their own devices, we're adding more digital components to our own curriculum. To Lynn's point, actually, is what does it look like for us to be successful without putting ourselves in a position where we're looking at dealing with large-scale crashes or, dinosaur systems and bolt-on solutions and every time you bolt on a new solution or another component makes it that much more difficult. So I'm not trying to create a bigger issue here. I just really think that from your perspective, where are we with technology? Who's looking at it? We have people in the district, and I heard that last night, we have people in the district who do this for a living, and it's like, that's great, but are they homegrown people, or are they people that are IT experts?
They're IT experts, and we do have outside consultants come in and work with them as far as testing and working on our plan. It continues to be an evolving plan so that we can grow it as we're adding, because our plan involves adding Chromebook carts at every layer of every school. So we have to look at all the schools together. What you're talking about has more to do with bandwidth as we look at the different aspects, and we have a sequential plan for adding bandwidth.
So it has to do with the architecture.
So we probably want to take that offline and bring it back to the school committee and ask them to come in.
It's a different,
And we've shown that. We've shown Lynn the plan.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't
It's
attend the
okay.
meeting.
Oh, okay, let's do
Okay,
this.
can we
Right.
move on?
Theater arts courses, are we ready for that?
Yes.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier theater arts courses, we currently run 3 periods a day, and that happens in the auditorium. I would really like to continue to expand that, but that space is used for lots of different stuff. I mentioned the RAG classes, Rate of Aggression Defense, and you might ask, well, why are Rate of Aggression Defense in the auditorium? Well, because it's traditionally been a private space and we don't have
Yeah.
another space that could accommodate. You need something that's large enough for a decent 15, 16 girls to be doing active stuff. I mean, they're learning different physical moves to try to prevent somebody from attacking you. And so they need a dedicated private space. So the auditorium had been a great space to do that, but now we've got theater arts courses that are running in there. So that becomes a scheduling problem.
I want to
because you've got-
ask you about the RAD classes.
Yep.
How many students currently take the class? You said 16?
So that's, like I said, section
Oh, that's a
size.
session.
Cap for the section.
Okay,
If you give
and
me 1 second, I can tell you how many students
that's a
are
really
enrolled.
important class.
Oh yeah, I mean, we'd love to expand that class. I've had people say we want to do something similar for guys. We've actually, our wellness department is looking at a program called
Mentors in
MVP,
Violence Prevention.
Mentors in Violence Prevention, which is for both
The boys.
males and females. Although you do a lot of kind of sectioning off and doing different work with boys and different work with girls, but that's all about trying to prevent violence before it happens, bystander stuff.
So what would be interesting, I think especially, talk about 21st century curriculum, Michael, right? That feeds into so many things.
Absolutely.
But I remember Jody saying to me a couple of years ago, I wish I could have every girl take RAD.
Oh, the wellness department would love to.
Jody wants RAD to be required for
I
junior
think
year
Jody
gym.
should have, because I have a child who went through RAD and was almost accosted in Times Square. And if it wasn't for her RAD class, it
Yep.
would have been bad. But that's a personal thing, it's just anecdotal. But I would love to know how many kids would like to, or you would like them to take that type of a class and can't. Because that is a big deal.
So currently, I think we fulfill all the requests for RAD? I'm going to tell you how many students are actually enrolled in RAD.
We had 67 request it.
I've got 11, 19, 30, 46, 62 kids who are in it.
Okay, so you did what you could to accommodate them.
Yeah.
But again, those are all classes that happen in the auditorium. So that's
Right.
3
Right, and
periods
they're-
first semester happening in the auditorium, 2 periods second semester happening in the auditorium, so you can't have
And
RAD.
it shuts down the auditorium, yeah.
You can't have RAD and theater classes running at the same time. So if, let's say, we're able to fill 5 theater classes next year, each semester. So how
Now
do
you
you
have
run?
contention.
How do you run 3 RAD classes and 5 theater classes in a 7-period day in the same space? And from a scheduling standpoint, then if you've got to fit RAD around theater or theater around RAD, now you're limiting the number of kids who can do.
And I would
take those
imagine when the
courses.
play comes around,
And that's the next thing is that.
because the play, the music.
Right, so we've got the spring musical.
Fall one.
There's got a
Right, so
great
this,
part of the
this
spring
is
musical.
how
I
the
was talking to you
trade-offs
about
get
that.
made, that you ask us to quantify things, and it's very difficult to quantify. Who got what, who didn't get what, if RAD's gonna schedule around theater classes, or theater's gonna schedule around RAD classes. It's not as easy to give you guys data like you want. We do the best we can, as many kids get it as they can. Maybe I'll change my social studies so I can fit this. So you don't see that now I'm not getting justice and law, I'm taking ethics, but I really wanted justice and law, but I had to do ethics in order to get my RAD class or my theater class because it didn't book correctly. So this is why when you ask for data, I cringe a little bit and say I don't know that I can give you that kind of data.
Is there first cut data though? I mean, like, when it goes through the system the first time, you kind of like, what does it come out? I mean, there's a lot of tweaking and things that go after the fact that might cover up some of that stuff, but if someone says they want RAD and theater and I mean, like, they're just putting their laundry list of things they want, correct?
So
Yes.
we could give a percentage and say Power School fulfilled this percentage of course requests, but then getting in and saying, well, was it because of a personnel related issue? It was business did kids not get to take business class because there wasn't a teacher available or because there wasn't space available? Some of those things are very hard to tease out. So you can't tell from, you might say, okay, 67% of the requests were fulfilled. It's hard to then get into what was that due to.
It might be more of a bucket with a couple different variables in it.
Yep.
Harry, instead of talking about the 93%, I know you haven't done it now, but for next time, can you actually look at your current schedule and count the number of classrooms that are available for 5 periods, for 5 straight periods? You don't have to do it now, but I just think that would put it in very specific,
That are open?
that are
So
available.
Like A period, there's
A period.
2 open classes,
Right.
B period,
Oh,
there's
currently.
5
Because
open.
that would tell us too, how many more faculty, we could add before we're going to have to do something, right?
I think I have that number. I've got the spreadsheet that shows what
Yeah.
are available. It depends on the period, but yeah, I can.
I think that's more concrete than just keep saying 93% capacity.
Now, that's a dangerous, because people go, oh.
Right, you got more.
And then too, what you won't see from behind the scheduling, so say B period, there's 1 gen ed class left open, but you won't know what that did to the sciences or the specialized classes, that if we could have run 3 chemistries that period, or if we could have run graphics and AP computer science and journalism all, and they were fighting for the same lab.
Jody, it sounds like you're a little farther ahead than we were talking about earlier, but did you ever get the number of what the population number was when you had to actually put the classrooms into the scheduling formula? Because we talked about you didn't need to put the rooms in until the population hit a certain number, and then all of a sudden you had to have.
I think it was, I didn't look at numbers, but I talked to our registrar, and I think it was just a couple of years ago that we really battened down on rooms. That we found we could no longer shift. So what we were doing was a lot of shifting around, which I think is one of the reasons we ended up with a science class and an art room. And seriously, like I said, battening down on those up front was only a couple of years ago.
What do you think the population was?
950?
A couple years ago.
Yeah, 1,000. We're at 1080 now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have those numbers for you, by the
That's
way.
a typo. It's weird.
And
Oh, that's last year. Yeah. We're 10.
but that's what we were still doing though, Lynn, was we had gone past, so when I say battening down, I mean like really stretching for everything. Things like sciences, we're having to book around science rooms. But I didn't so much worry about English or history because they could move around.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but we've hit the wall where now you can't leave anything to chance because it's not going to happen. You know?
It helps with, that's basically when the squeeze really started, so it helps with percentage-wise, like
Yeah.
the number of classrooms per number of kids. It helps.
So the numbers that you'd asked, A period, there are 3 classrooms that are available. They're not in use. And these are going to be different classrooms, so it's not going to be the same classroom period to period. So there are 3 classrooms not being used, A period. B period, there are 3 classrooms not being used. C period, there are 7 classrooms not being used. D period, there's 1 classroom not being used. E period, there are 4 classrooms not being used. F period, there are 2 classrooms not being used. G period, there are 4 classrooms not being used. For an average of, it's probably going to be 3 point something. 3.4 classrooms not being used in any given period.
And this is of all the classrooms, not just core
Correct.
classes?
These are all the classes. That includes science labs. There are some computer labs that are thrown into that.
What's the total number of classrooms for the folks who are watching at home?
Let's see.
I don't have
That's
Hello.
50, it's 57, and I didn't, like the music lab, which is a small little, I didn't
Lost it.
include that in there, but, so what's 57 minus 12, or 57 minus 11, 46?
Okay.
So that includes science classrooms and.
So it's an
general
average of
classrooms.
3.5 classes out of 46. Okay, which, right, there's your 7%
Yeah, roughly.
average, okay.
So essentially, if you added 3 more sections, am I saying this right? No.
So that's 21 total, no, not 21, more than that. 3, 6, 13, 14, 18, 20, so that's 24 rooms across the 7 period rotation that are available. Each teacher is gobbling up 5 of those.
So 4 teachers, roughly. So you're 4 teachers away from 100% capacity.
Yes.
I just throw in one quick comment, just off subject slightly before we leave theater arts. We always hear about drama mamas. I'm a drama papa. And I've been associated with Friends of Drama to differing degrees during my daughter's 4 years here. And with the onset of a drama teacher this time, now using the gym, the auditorium, I'm hearing from good authority that there are issues coming up
Oh yeah, it's problematic.
around green room usage, auditorium, but also interrelationship with the Friends of Drama. I'm gathering, because I heard at a meeting recently, that there's a lot of uncertainty on their part as to what their role is or is expected to be vis-a-vis what it has been successfully for many years in running the drama program successfully. I think it needs a little more.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually met with some of the board members of Friends of Drama just recently, because they've traditionally really focused on supporting the fall play and the spring musical primarily, and the class plays to a certain extent. And now we're starting to get more kids involved in drama and looking to try to do more events, and that's one of the questions that
Yeah, okay.
that we're
glad it's on
discussing.
the radar.
What's Friends of Drama, and you start to get into, so here becomes a space issue. So we now have a theater arts teacher who is teaching theater arts classes in the auditorium. Peter Pan's going to be going on in March, so they're going to need to build a set. That set's going to need to be on the stage, and Bill Grady's been great. They're trying to build a set that you can move back out of the way each day. But how can you, as a theater arts teacher, be teaching theater classes if your stage has somebody else's props on there? And fortunately, Peter Pan isn't going to require a fixed set of props. They're going to be movable. But right, so now, inevitably you now start to get into competition for space.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the band wants to come in and do a band concert and they want to set up for that, or the chorus concert tomorrow night wants to set up the risers, or the theater arts teacher wants to be working on the stage, everybody's competing for the same space.
Can I interject?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm speaking for everybody or just myself, but I think we all get the drift that the space is completely cramped at that school.
Yep.
And I think something needs to be done, whether it's an addition, whether it's a renovation, or whether it's a new building. But I feel like for the better part of a year, all we've been doing is talking about how little space there is. I think we know. I think it would be productive, and maybe I'm wrong, is if, for example, the department heads, English, math, science, said nothing extravagant, but to serve the population that we have now, this is how many classrooms we need. Whether it's including a writing lab or a math lab or,
Yep.
that. And then show us where you're short. Like nothing extravagant where, not talking Harvard kind of stuff. Just, the things that you need to get through the day so that you guys aren't cramped. And then what would that look like if it was a new building? What would that look like if it was a renovation? What would that look like if it was an addition? I think then maybe we can start having some concrete ideas. How much does it cost for each of those 3 options? I feel like we're just spinning our wheels. I don't know if I'm speaking for myself or to everybody else, but I know there's not enough room from between the tour and the first day to every month that we've met. There's not enough room for you guys. And I'd like to facilitate something to go forward to help. Yeah. And I think despite of all of the things working against you guys, you're in the top 25 schools in the state, and you made Channel 5 News, and it was all over Facebook and everything else. What could you do, where could you be if you had the faculty you needed and the extra space that you need? So I feel like instead of, 16 kids didn't get rad and 12 kids didn't get anatomy, and we know that. What can we do if all of the kids could get the classes that they need? And I know I think in one of the meetings I took notes, there was a projected growth for the next 5 or 10 years. You know, how many more teachers or classrooms you need for then, so that we're not in 5 years doing this again. That's my personal opinion. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me, but I think that would be more productive than every month telling us there's not enough room.
I think that is a next step that's connected to what you said earlier, what you started out with, that you want to meet with your department heads, and maybe that can be a part of that to make it more concrete. We also talked about the priorities of space, which I think that's the next step.
And I don't know who the department head would be for things like all the electives. I don't know.
Well, they all fall under one of the departments. You know,
So there's a fine and performing arts department head, there's a business technology.
And even like this early education program that you guys would like to develop. I think that's phenomenal, but I don't know if there's a department head for a program that doesn't exist yet.
No, there isn't.
Well,
Or that would be
there is
Jody.
district-wide. It would be, we have an early childhood coordinator who would take care of that.
If you're going to ask the department has to put the time and effort into creating space and personnel plans, how would you decide among them?
How would I decide?
Yes.
I don't think it's up to me. I think it's up to either not even this committee, but we need to present it to the towns, I think. And we need to say,
I think they're looking for a recommendation from us.
okay, but I think they deserve to know that we looked into 3 options: a renovation, an addition, and a new build. That we put our effort and our brain power to this, and we found out how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take and how it's going to affect our towns and our children, negatively or positively. And then I think that we need to say, as a committee, we recommend A, B, or C, whatever it is, based on finances, based on maybe we can't do a renovation, maybe we can't add a 3rd story because of structural reasons. Maybe we can't add out to one side because of where the boundary is, or our septic system, or things that we just aren't talking about here. I mean, we might be driven one way because of things that we can't do.
And Bill actually, it sounds like the start of our next meeting. Has done exactly that. Looked at some different parameters of, what our current facility can do to expand, and looked at some of those options. So he's ready.
Just to clarify, that my original understanding was this committee is supposed to be evaluating and trying to help determine needs.
Right.
And that based on those needs, there's some options for there, but this committee wouldn't necessarily be developing those options. They'd just be saying, yes, we have a need, and now we need to kind of go to the next step. And part of that is just trying to find those, telling the story of where the needs are, of how many classes you're short, or how much square footage you're short, or kind of doing some of those types of things. Like, it's great that we needed whatever it was, 5 or 6 general classrooms, but having, kind of some of that other information of, if we wanted to support some of the, all the various things that we were talking about tonight, I mean, what would that look like? Would that be X number of this? I mean, and he started going through some of that stuff, and trying to determine, there's different buckets. There's things to kind of loosen up things for utilization, and there's other things to meet demand because they know they're not meeting all those needs, and there's other things that they would like to develop further, or have new that haven't even occurred yet, but would be an excellent idea or program. And how would you do that, and what would it look like for supporting that for classrooms? And obviously the classrooms need teachers to kind of do all those things, also.
Well, I think you know, in Bolton, the selectmen and the advisory committee, and I think a good portion of the citizens expect not just a list of here's everything that'd be nice and here's everything we could do, but what are the priorities and what are the must-haves? And I understand your frustration about we seem to be going over the same ground over and over. I think this has been a tremendous help in taking us down to the next level of detail. It's very thorough, and it's very well presented. But I don't feel that I'm at a position where I could say, here's the core stuff that absolutely has to be done. Here's the stuff that it's not core, but we really, really strongly recommend the towns do. And here's the other stuff that would really be good to consider as part of this project. And because if we just go before, if I just go before the town of Bolton and say, here's my wish list, I'm not even going to get a decent hearing.
Not a wish list. This is what we need and this is why. We need a bigger gym because X, Y, and Z. We need new science classes because they don't meet safety standards. We need... Or
Our science classes are up to code, right?
They are. They're just
Thank you.
updated guidelines.
Right, they're updating guidelines.
Okay.
I think you know what I was trying to say.
There are
I was trying to
regulations.
say that you guys weren't doing anything that you weren't supposed to be doing, but if you're going to build a science lab in 2014, it would not look like the science lab that you have
Exactly.
now.
Right.
And you are limited to what science classes you can hold by the equipment in the science lab. Right? And colleges are increasingly looking for more and more advanced STEM classes for students, so we want our students to get into better colleges. I mean, it's a ripple effect. So I wouldn't say, this is our wish list, we would like, 17 new classrooms in a brand new building and tile floors, and I wouldn't say that. I would say, this is what we need and this is why. This is what our professionals in this town told us that they need.
I agree with you, but for me,
Yeah,
and I do agree with you, it's not lip service,
yeah,
and you know me well enough to know when I'm giving you lip service.
yeah,
This document made a huge difference for me.
okay.
I finally.
I'm not saying anything bad about this
No,
document.
no. I know you're not. I know, and I sense your frustration that we've all been there. All of us have been there. It's like, let's just move forward. But I think this has turned the tide for me.
Okay,
That, and I'm just one individual.
yeah.
But now I understand it, and hearing Perry, Dr. Graham, and the others go through it. Sorry.
Thank you, Lorraine.
You're welcome. Really makes me, okay, and I'm making notes thinking, all right, so now I see where he's making the switch off. I don't feel like I need to go through it in such excruciating detail, but others do, so maybe that's what we have to do to get to where you want to be. I'm not telling you, drop what you're saying, walk away from what you're saying, because I agree with you.
I understand everyone's learning curve is different and everyone has a different foundation from where we started, but I feel like it's been 12 months. So
It has, it's been frustrating.
I feel like that.
Well, I think part of that, I think, I don't want to speak for the whole committee, but I think that to me, the general sense is there's definitely, a need to do something. What exactly that something is the dilemma of trying to boil it down to, what the school could use and what could be sellable to the towns and all of that stuff. So, I think, kind of, I don't think people that are involved need more convincing that there's some sort of need. It's kind of quantifying what is the need.
And prioritize.
Yes.
And we have to put a number
prioritize.
on it. We have to put a dollar value on it. We can't just keep going in circles about what we need. We need to have a diagram. This is what it would look like. And this is how much it would cost. And this is how much more staff we would need. And we need concrete information, I think.
It was on the agenda. He's got some good pictures.
Another piece of this is enrollment data. We started this at the very first meeting and we were saying, well, all we can look at is the current births in town. But this is why we're in a renovated building that 10 years later, 9 years later, however long it's been, doesn't fit us, right? We had a big renovation. I think that you've got to look at enrollment growth in these towns. At one of the meetings, somebody talked about there being 450 buildable lots in one of these towns or something. Like,
Yeah.
how, to me, growth is a huge unknown. You know, if we,
I think at one of the meetings, someone gave a projection. I'm looking at my notes.
I have a brand new one, actually.
So
it was scheduled
feel
to
like
be at the school committee.
We said no to projection because MASB wasn't gonna let us, but now we're not, wasn't that it? They wouldn't
Yeah.
consider growth
Well,
projections?
right, they only build theirs on
we
birth.
have to
So
look
we
at growth
don't,
projections.
but
We'd
now
like
we're
to
not
think so, but we
constrained
don't.
by that anymore, and we should be looking at growth projections,
Well,
right? No?
Why are you not
we're
considering-
always going to be constrained by whatever the direction MSBA takes.
Yes, agreed, but isn't this effort to say, what do we think we need?
Yes, we should inform ourselves first.
Right.
Right,
Right.
yes.
And, and the reason is that we could choose, it's always our choice, that we could go 100% on stuff that
Absolutely.
we say that is so important, we must have it, whether or not the state wants to go for
Right.
it. And that's part of what's been driving me about, I want the details so that both I can understand how troublesome the place, the school is, but also so I can be an advocate. And until I have the information that lets me understand and evaluate, you know, what are the choices we can go in, I can't be your advocate.
Yep.
And I think all of us really understand we have a problem here. There's a big problem. But how to get to the solutions is where all of us are very much hoping to work together on. And I think that consensus is still forming. And I think this detail is a great help towards figuring out the areas that choices can be made on.
And so then does Perry then take this, Dr. Graham then take this and prioritize for us?
Well,
And then we,
let me
what, go ahead.
suggest, I mean, it's 9 o'clock. Let me suggest that we set some dates. First off, for future agendas, I think we have Jody, you said you'd come back in February with some information for us, right? So,
And what would that be?
well, that was courses, kids.
Course enrollment,
We're gonna try, I was gonna try to see what I could learn from looking at course enrollment and what courses, some of what we talked about a little
Right.
bit tonight.
Kids requested stuff and they didn't get it. How severe is that? Is it worse in some subjects than others? I think that was how we put it. So that's February. I think our January meeting is all the stuff we didn't cover tonight. And
Yes.
that's Bill Cleary's presentation. We were going to have a discussion of the differing versions of interim report. And I think at the next meeting, we also should come up with what would we ask Perry Graham to do for next steps?
That would be helpful. I mean, one of the things I was interested in is reading through this. What are your questions? What are what's the information that you're still looking for? To what extent did I answer the kind of big driving questions? To what extent didn't I? It sounds like, I mean, I would recommend, and it sounds like, I heard some other people say it, getting more detailed information from department heads to flesh out some of this.
Yes.
Creating some priorities. This is the problem, this is what we would need, this is what level priority that is. Does that make sense?
Is it possible to characterize those things into a couple different buckets?
I think so. Just to be perfectly honest, from a bandwidth perspective, I don't know how quickly I can turn around some of those things.
Where I was going was, I don't think there's room for you on the January agenda anyway. And probably not even February.
Then I will respectfully wait.
So that's why, yeah.
Well, actually, that brings to mind, is it desirable to meet slightly more often than monthly, given that we will have something digestible that some of us have been seeking for some time, but that has a consequence, which is really talking about amongst ourselves the priorities that the administration and the teachers and citizens and parents have, and that will be no small amount of effort, I would suspect. And I feel like the monthly opportunity may not serve us well towards progressing to that kind of priority setting and consensus building. So I throw that out to maybe think about for January. Should we meet for some period of time every 3 weeks, or maybe even every 2 weeks, to not feel like we're failing to move forward?
No, we only had a schedule through December. So I was going to ask, when do we want to meet in January?
No, I meant, is there a time frame for the interim report or whatever it is we're talking about?
We tossed it out last month.
Right, the interim report was due. The original interim report was due in September.
No, we weren't ready.
Revised interim was soon.
So tried to shoot for December.
So is there a new date?
We haven't set one as a group, no.
So the questions on the table are, do we want to meet more frequently than monthly? And when, and if we want an interim report, and if we do, when do we want to prepare that? Are those the questions, or am I putting words in people's mouths? Because I just want to move things forward.
And what would your opinions on those two things be?
My personal opinion? Personally, I don't know how much more bandwidth I have based on the programs that I'm involved with in this type of a capacity. But take me out of it, and I think you have some momentum. We have some momentum, and things are starting to move. And if there's substantive meetings with identified outcomes, and we meet those outcomes, and we're moving on the right path, then every 2 to 3 weeks makes sense to me. But that's my opinion. I also think an interim report, I don't think we were ready. I wouldn't have been able to get behind it. It would not have been comfortable for any of us to put together an interim report, because we were all in such different places. But I think this meeting proves to me that we're all kind of moving in the same direction. It's not going as quickly as we want, and I get where you're at. And I think probably more than me, more of the people around this table agree with it. But I think at this point, if we had maybe 2 or 3 more meetings like this and got the data that we're on the path to getting, we could have something, at least directionally, to say, this is what we know. Here you go. We keep saying we don't have data, but now we have enough that we can.
So you think April's when an interim report should come out?
I don't want to make that commitment. That's really the people who are doing the work. I mean, do you think that we would, based on what are the big?
Depends how interim you want this report to be.
Right. I think that's a very good question.
Right.
I thought the draft document that you presented and shared with us, Bob, is an overview of activities that we've done thus far.
And that's fair enough to share.
And that might be fair enough to share as sort of a progress report.
Yeah.
Should we examine that in January then?
I think that's worth it.
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, frankly, if we could get ourselves into a groove where every 2 to 3 meetings we have an update. So, and I'm a project manager person, so if that's too much, he's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're making progress, Bob.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But
Leave it be.
Well,
I mean, I'm happy with 1 meeting a month, but that's just my opinion.
So am I. I mean, I'm personally happy with it,
Yeah.
but
Well, I think if we all meet and have a concentrated focus, concentrated agenda, I think we can bang it out.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, when do you want to meet in January? And my only observation there is, we seem to repeatedly be meeting the day after
I know.
a school committee
and
meeting.
you're killing me.
Should we meet in the week between school committee
Yes.
meetings?
Yes.
If that works for people.
So here are some dates so that we could look at that. So Thursday, still on Thursdays, everybody?
Yeah.
January 22nd.
So were we gonna move the 14th?
Nope.
That's Wednesday the 14th?
Yep. Yes. So January 22nd, so that we can get a meeting in February. It would be off the third Thursday issue. It would be so we can get a meeting in February. The only way to get off school committee would be Thursday the 5th. So that's 2 meetings.
There's a school committee meeting, oh, because there's vacation.
Right.
Yeah,
Can we do the 5th, or do you want to jump to and do this?
ask Jody if the 5th's too
You do
early in
the
the
5th?
month.
Or were you thinking?
Well, I thought I'd have homework February.
All right, so the other one would be the 26th. That one would be against the school committee, but then we could, at least in March, try to do the 19th, which would not be.
So did you say the 26th?
26th of February?
I cannot do the 26th of February. Or if I do, it'll be late, because I think school council that night as well.
Yeah, I know I have an issue that night.
You want to shoot for the 5th?
See what I can do.
All right. So back up and go to the 5th, and then March 19th. That feels far apart. You want?
So we said, I'm sorry, March 5th was the next one?
So February 5th, and then March 19th, January 22nd.
February 5th and March 19th, that's
Why
like
not
6
March
weeks.
5th?
Right.
Yeah, but there's
So
school
we-
vacation week in
There's
the
school
middle of it.
vacation week in there.
That's
We
why.
could do March 5th.
Town Stowe is looking to undoubtedly be having a special town meeting somewhere, end of February or early March.
Okay.
Fire station.
I just need it today.
As soon as they get it ready, I think they're aiming for like the last week.
So we said February 5th and March 5th?
No.
March 9th.
Is
March
that likely, do you speculate on a weekday or weekend day, or?
My clerk is pushing for Saturday. I don't know if she's
The fifth.
available.
Good for her. She'd like to get people to come.
I guess. What are they doing?
Town meeting, special town meeting for our
On the weekend?
fire station, pump facility reuse, training of the fire station.
We have some space needs if we could borrow that. Obviously, we could do a daycare center there.
There will be some space
No, we
left over
can't.
for mine.
We can't do a school. A private school can, we can't use it.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
So those are the meeting dates, and if we just carry off the agenda that's left on this night, we have January's agenda.
Yeah.
So March, is it the 19th that we're
19th.
sticking with? Okay.
So it does
So-
feel like a long span of time where,
But you know what? Maybe out of the February meeting, we could have we have a reason to have a small work group,
Yeah.
and we work on something.
Yeah.
That's a good
between there.
idea.
And you'll do the projected enrollments next time as well?
I can certainly do that.
If we can.
We're getting.
Yeah, if you
And
feel like that's.
Barry would just kind of continue to sort of finish
Yeah,
up this.
question.
Very briefly, yes.
Yeah. And hopefully that next time we'll say the author and page numbers. Draft.
I stapled mine, just saying.
Thank you very much for a very productive meeting. Have a very happy holiday. Thank you. Or be in a very happy holiday.